Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CCL 2022 virtual conference. My name is Karina Ramírez, and I am the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for CCL. I wanted to take this opportunity to welcome our speaker, Dr. Richard Pimentel. If you read Richard's resume, it says he's an expert on leadership, diversity, disability, inclusion, veterans disability issues, attitude change, and the Americans with Disabilities Act amendments, or ADAAA. But Hollywood, for better or for worse, doesn't make a major motion picture about someone's life with those qualifications. What Richard is all about is breaking barriers. He has overcome more challenges than most of us can ever imagine. But Richard does not think that he is unique. In fact, he thinks we all have unique gifts. He calls it our music within. And our goal is to help all of us unlock it. He has managed to do that for the most ardent of disbelievers. Additionally, he co-wrote all of the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, materials for the Society for Human Resource Management, and was also rated as the top presenter at a national SHRM conference. Richard's movie is now available on streaming services and channels worldwide, as it did in theaters in 2007. It is with great pleasure that I show you the Music Within trailer before Richard comes to present.
Funny how things happen. Only in hindsight do you realize how something can change your entire life.
I need volunteers to stay behind. This is your chance to be a hero.
I always wanted to be a hero.
They're coming! Ah! Ah!
I was deaf.
I can't authorize government funds to send you to college. You're deaf.
What? It's a deaf joke.
We cannot plan the events that shape us.
Look like you have a coke problem. May I?
You better wash your hands. This may be contagious. You wanna sit down, Einstein?
Yeah, sure.
We cannot predict the moments that define us.
I think you two need to leave. You're making the other customers very uncomfortable.
He's very sorry for turning your customers' stomachs. That's obviously your job.
You guys can leave, or I can call the police.
Call him.
You okay?
Next time, use a blinker.
But we can all change the world around us.
I'm deaf, but I can see what you're saying from over there. My friend is not a retard. He's got cerebral palsy. See, it affects his motor skills. It means that his brain is perfectly functioning while his body's more or less useless. Think of it as the opposite of you.
You don't need to change their minds about people's disabilities. You need to change their minds about themselves.
This fall
What is it that you're afraid of? That he can't work with you or that you can't work with him?
comes the story of a man
The U.S. government wants me to create a program on hiring the disabled. I'll be training every agency, CIA, NASA, all of them.
who gave a voice to the voiceless
You don't have a clue how good this is.
and hope to the forgotten.
Americans with Disabilities Act says that you can't discriminate against people simply because they don't look like you.
The differences that you make, the ones of lasting importance, they're the little differences that you make in the life of another person.
Music Within.
And now it's my pleasure to welcome Richard Pimentel to the session. Richard.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I've been looking forward to this for really for quite a while. And the idea of talking about inclusion and including people with disabilities into what you're doing and the movement is so appealing to me. I am easily inspired. And one of the things that inspired me is an old African folk saying, and I'd like to share it with you. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others? Well, I want to go far. And this project, this such important work that you're doing, we need to go far. And including the disability movement is what I would like to talk about in the area of inclusion. Inclusion now, you hear a lot about it. It almost seems to be trendy, but it really was quite a while ago that the disability movement, when we helped put together the Americans with Disabilities Act, that was 30 years ago. We weren't doing so well one-on-one. So we all decided to band together. And there is a saying that is a pretty popular saying now, but I'd like to share it with you. It's called "Nothing About Us Without Us." There was a time when we would try and help other people by telling them what to do, by telling them what we were going to give them or do for them. But then the idea of inclusion is consult with us, because we might have an idea of what we need. We want to work with you. And the idea of bringing people with disabilities into the climate change world that you're in is such a vastly important idea. And first of all, I'll tell you why I think it's important for you, but I want to tell you why it's important for us. First of all, in this moment, I think we have to say that climate change and controlling it is very important for people with disabilities. It's important for a number of reasons. First of all, health issues, communication issues. The climate change certainly will take its toll on everyone, but I think it exacts a pretty serious toll for many people with disabilities, people on medication, people with mobility impairments, people who have difficulty or a long road to get information in a timely manner that they may need to actually save their lives. So this is not, oh yeah, you can get on the bus too, but climate change, and if we succeed, it's going to help people with disabilities. And if we don't, I think it's going to take quite a toll on people with disabilities. However, this must not be a movement for them. It needs to be a movement with them. It's a movement where you will not have to carry them. Trust me, people with disabilities are able to carry their own weight. ADA started in the United States really, it was signed into law about 30 years ago, but there was a movement about 10 years before that. And what that movement was people with disabilities looked around and said, what's happening here is wrong, and we need to do something about it. And because of that, they came together. I had a great friend, Art Honeyman, who was had cerebral palsy, was a quadriplegic, really didn't walk. You know what he told me that I never forgot? He said, Richard, he said, I want to show you that I don't need legs in order to stand for something. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's true. And he said, you know what you are, Richard? You went to Vietnam and you're deaf, but that doesn't keep you from hearing the cries for help of other people. Welcoming people with disabilities into your ranks is going to help change everyone's lives. First of all, They are a major stakeholder in this game, as well you know it. Also, climate change is a life and death issue for many, possibly all of us. And again, for people with disabilities, even more so. But we have struggled. How did we do it with ADA? Well, it just started with protests. It started with civil disobedience. It started with looking at the laws and saying it was wrong, and politics. But the bottom line is that the ADA started by us coming together and demonstrating why this was important, not just for people with disabilities, but important for everyone. Do you know that disability rights are not unique? You know what disability rights are? Disability rights are human rights. And bringing folks with disabilities into the movement, I think, is so very important. Why are they going to really, when you ask them to come in, what do you get out of it? What do they, and in inclusion, we ask, what do you bring into the party when we include women into groups? So important, right? When we include minorities in a group, when we include everyone in a group, what unique things do they bring to the party, not just add to the numbers? Well, I want to share with you a little bit about what is brought to the party. Number one, you're talking about a group of people that have done it before. You know what they've done? What they've done is they changed the law in the US, but they didn't stop there. The first thing we did is we went to Canada, and then we went to Europe. You can't get in to any of the big country groups in Europe unless you have laws protecting people with disabilities. Australia, the Middle East is working diligently to help with folks with disabilities. A movement that started in a couple states in the United States has now become a worldwide movement. And one of the things that I want to share with you is I'd like to share with you what you can do to bring them into the movement and what you're going to get from people with disabilities. It's an amazing thing. The first thing, accessibility, is so important. I want to see your organization accessible to people with disabilities. I want to make sure that you're in places that are physically accessible, that when they come in and there's a meeting, that things are communication-wise accessible, sign language interpreters, notices that go out. Feeling effectively welcome, I think, is going to be one of the most important things. But now asking them and using what they say to help you know what to try and, oh my gosh, what to try and look for. Think about this for a second. I'm hard of hearing. Lost a lot of my hearing in Vietnam. If I am deaf and I'm living in California and we got some forest fires coming at me, how are you going to tell me to get out of the house? In the end, have people with disabilities say, this is how I want information. This is what I use to get information. You need to do that. These are the people I want you to contact. And these are the things that we need to do to let the emergency people know that we're here and what we need. People with disabilities are vested in it, but they're also vested in it because they're people, and we're all vested in these. One of the things that we need to be aware of is this. However, what do they bring to you? It's an amazing thing. We have a program that I love to give to young people with disabilities, kids in high school, And we asked them a question. And these are all kinds of disabilities, from physical, intellectual, everything that you can imagine, cerebral palsy, autism. We asked them an amazing question. And at first, I didn't think we were going to get a cool answer. But when we started getting the answers, we were flabbergasted. We used to ask these kids, what is your disability and what superpower has your disability given you? Imagine you're young and someone asks you that. Something that we were taught, I was taught as young, I should be embarrassed about. Now they're saying it's a superpower. Would you like to hear some of them? Let me tell you what some of the superpowers. Many of these young people say it's given me courage. How does it give you courage? And here's what they say, and they realize it. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes we fail. And we learn from that failure. And we learn that if we do fail and if we do struggle, we can get up again. It's confidence doesn't mean that you're always going to succeed. Confidence means that you get up again afterwards. And were we ever knocked down in the early days of the disability movement? I was put in jail so many times, I was on a first name basis with the local police in Portland, Oregon. And we did horrible things like try and eat in a restaurant that didn't want to serve us. And we just, with my friend Art Honeyman, who had cerebral palsy, you saw a little bit of that in the trailer. But here's something I want to share with you. It's a line, and I want you to keep it in mind, because you're going out, and there will be times when you will fail, but it's not a reason to quit. There may be times when you get arrested, and that's not a reason to quit. I know that. So here is something I'd like to share with you. Ready? A failure that you learn from is more valuable than a success that you have failed to understand. Nelson Mandela said it so wonderfully. You know what Nelson Mandela said? Nelson Mandela said, I never lose. He says, I never lose. I'm a winner. And I said, well, that's so arrogant. I mean, I like Nelson Mandela, but that's so arrogant. How can you never lose? And then he said it, what he meant. You know what he said? When I try something, I either win or I learn. I don't lose. Any time you're disappointed and you learn from it, that is not a failure. And I think that is so wonderfully important for everyone. So when it comes to the point where you're going to say, oh my, we didn't do that one quite the way we wanted to, what did we learn from it? What do we learn next time? And young people with disabilities, excuse me, I just took a pencil away from a 2-year-old. Okay, keeping the little ones safe is a really important thing. Say hello. Hello. Okay. Go see mama. Okay. Thank you very much. Anyway, it is so important to be able to realize that, and people with disabilities know that too. You know what the young people say that they bring to the table? By the way, would you like someone in your movement that learns from mistakes and believes that I never lose, I only learn? Absolutely. Someone with confidence. Well, the other one is creativity. People say, I'm creative. Well, can a disability help you with creativity? Absolutely. In fact, there's a line that people with disabilities use. It's almost a mantra that they use, and I'm so appreciative that I heard it and helped help move that out into the community. Here is the mantra about creativity, about your disability. Creativity, okay? The genius of creativity is inspired by necessity. Think of all the people you know with disabilities who have necessities, things that they must do, and they must do them in a different way. They must do them in a creative way, maybe a way that no one has ever thought of before. The genius of creativity inspired by necessity. Well, I think that this movement could use some creativity, and it is a necessity. And people with disabilities are going to look for maybe different ways to do things, maybe things you haven't thought of before. So bringing them in to do that. And the commitment, oh my gosh, what a commitment. Art Honeyman, my friend, we lost count of the number of times that he was arrested. You saw in the Pancake House, I'll tell you the story. When I first met Art, I was back from Vietnam. I was deaf. I was learning to read lips. I was going to college, and Art had cerebral palsy, and he was trying to get a Coca-Cola open in the cafeteria, and he was having a really bad time. And so I said, well, maybe I should go help him. And I went in and I took it and I opened it up for it and I handed it to him. No one could understand Art. His speech was so bad, no one could understand him. He only talked in very guttural kind of language. I lost all my upper register hearing in Vietnam, and I was learning to read lips. So I said to him, here, maybe I can help you. I opened up the soda, took the straw, put it in the soda, put it there. I said, don't talk to me. I'm deaf. I've learned to read lips, but I can't read your lips. I'll get seasick. And then and I started to leave, and he grabs me. He's, oh my, and he wants to talk to me. And I thought, oh no, I mean, I'm going to have to like pretend to understand him. And he started to talk to me, and I understood every word he said, every single word he said. How was that possible? Well, see, I lost all my upper register hearing in an explosion. I only heard very low sounds. Art only talked in very low sounds. Not only could I understand him, but I was the only one that could. And we became friends. And people would come, everyone, well, they didn't want to talk to me, but they want to talk to Art. Art was the smartest person in the school. In fact, his IQ was over my cholesterol level. And the people would come to him and they would say, Art, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then Art would tell them for about 5 minutes. And then they'd turn to me and say, what did he say? And I'd tell them because I could understand him. Then they talked to me. And I turned to Art and say, what did he say? Because I'm deaf. And Art would tell me. We were the strangest pair you've ever seen in your life. And they wouldn't let us into a movie, I'll tell you that. They kicked us out of Billy Jack like 3 times. Anyway, Art moved into the dorm. I went to Portland State University. Art moved into the dorm, and I lived in the dorm. And one day he calls me, and he could call on the phone. He knocked the phone over, and they make sounds into the phone. And when the operator heard Art, they just transferred to my room. He said, it's my birthday. I've got $10 pancakes. He loved pancakes. I knew what he wanted. He wanted me to get his wheelchair. He wanted me to put him in the wheelchair, take him down the stairs because there was no elevator, walk him 8 blocks to the pancake house, get him up into the pancake house, order pancakes and eat it. That's what he wanted. And so he's my friend. So I did it. And we got there, and you saw what happened. And in the end, the waitress came, and this was before the ADA. Do you know there was a law at one time called the Ugly Law? It was in 23 different states in the United States. It said no one who's crippled, maimed, deformed, or otherwise an unsightly or improper person shall be out upon the public thoroughfare. Amazing. And no one, people had to cover up amputations and things like that. Well, apparently we had broken the Ugly Law. And the waitress said, "You are the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. I thought people like you were supposed to die at birth. Get out." This was at the Pancake House in Portland, Oregon. Art looked at me. I said Art was a genius, but he was more than a genius. He was an evil genius, which is even better than a genius. And he looked at me and he said, "Richard, why is she talking to you that way? You don't look any worse than you normally look." And I said, "No, I think she's talking to you." "No, I think she wants to date me. She's just trying to get rid of you." So we got an argument about which one she wanted to date. This seemed to irritate her terribly. Anyway, she said, "If you don't leave, I'm going to call the police." Art said, "Call them." They did. The police said, if you don't leave, you're going to go to jail. And Art said, "I want to go to jail. And my friend Richard wants to go to jail too." I'm thinking, no, I wanted pancakes. But the bottom line, and by the way, if you want to test this out, Google Harvard, Google Ugly Law, and put in Portland, Oregon. Harvard Law did a whole thing on Art and I being arrested and how that law eventually turned in to be one of some of the bases for the challenge of these laws with the ADA. Anyway, they put us in jail, kept us there overnight. The judge let us out in the morning, and Art starts laughing, and because in jail they gave us pancakes. I said, "Why are you laughing, Art?" He said, "Oh, I got my pancakes, still got my $10. Want to do it again?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do it again." So we went out and we did it as often as possible. Why? Because we had to show that what they were doing was wrong. And I could have walked out on Art. I wasn't considered disabled in that way. But here's what I learned in Vietnam, my friends. You never leave a fallen comrade on the ground. You never abandon one for anything in the world. And I wasn't about ready to abandon Art. You look at the fallen comrades and the ones that could fall to push me. I think the one thing I really want to share is that people with disabilities are going to not only benefit from the work you're doing, they will benefit the work you're doing through their creativity, through who they are, what their perceptions, their perspective, but they must be invited in. You know, one of the main things that people with disabilities complain about when they get involved in social issues is that they're not really very accessible and welcomed to protest and to that, even though they did a pretty good job. We learned from the best. I don't know if you can see it, but I'll tell you what it is. The civil rights movement saw that people with disabilities were going to change the world. And we did not know how to do civil disobedience. We did not know how to do all this stuff without getting in more trouble than anyone could imagine. So they sent someone to teach us what to do. And this person gave us a prayer. I want to share this prayer with you. And these days, it's an important prayer. Here's the prayer. Ready? if there be violence, let it be on us, not from us. And we had to say that every time we protested, every time that we demonstrated. You know who taught us that? Good trouble, my friends. Get in good trouble. A very young John Lewis came and taught the disability movement what we needed to do to win. And I've never forgot it. And he is one of my heroes. And I think in a world where there's confrontation, and from time to time, there's going to be confrontation because there is controversy. If there be violence, let it be upon us, not from us. If there's going to be rudeness, if there's going to be negativity, let it be towards us, not from us. And people with disabilities, this isn't our first rodeo. We have done this before, and many of us are itching to continue because we know that not only will this save our lives, but it will save the lives of others. So what I want you to do is make a pledge. And the pledge is that we know if we want to go far, we must go together. Let us make sure that the people that we want to be together with us are welcome. How do you welcome people with disabilities? Accessibility, communication. But the most important thing is I'm going to listen to you, okay? I'm going to ask you your opinion, and I'm going to take your advice. And in the end, that's how you got into the movement. That's how people with disabilities will, and they will bring you some wonderful perspectives, some wonderful ideas, and some very effective, dedication that we all are going to need. So people with disabilities, that's who I want to walk with on this journey, because I know that I want to go far, and I know that you need to go far too. I worry about climate change and the problems that the group that I work with and have always worked with, people with disabilities, what they're going to go through and what they're going to suffer. And I want them to have, a chance, and I want them to not just depend on other people saving them. I want them to literally, as my friend Art would say, stand up for themselves, whether they can stand at all. And even if they can't stand, I guarantee you, my friends, they will help you stand tall, and they will help you stand the heat. Okay, Greg. I'm reading one now about long COVID. That's interesting. COVID has obviously changed the world. I'll tell you what my grandma told me. My grandma was so smart. My grandma said, within every adversity lies the seeds to an equal or greater opportunity. I totally believe that. And COVID, oh my, that is an adversity. And what is the greater opportunity? Well, one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of people with COVID and long COVID are getting different impairments and disabilities. Here's the good news with the disability community. There's nothing that COVID will do to you from a disability standpoint, whether it be the brain fog or the breathing or the heart or the hearing. It affects the hearing, all kinds of things. There's nothing that it can do to you that we haven't already seen with people with disabilities. And we have accommodations for all of those kinds of things. In fact, the idea, and without the disability community, we wouldn't have this. People are wearing masks. We get the mask. However, you ever been in a room with people and they're wearing masks and you're having a discussion? Kind of hard to hear, isn't it? Okay. Well, if it's kind of hard to hear, there actually is a solution. There is the coolest company. I love this company. They're this coolest company. They're a hearing aid company. Starkey. They're in Minnesota. And they said, this is a real problem for our people to lip read. So you know what they did? They invented a new hearing aid using artificial intelligence, that if you're wearing a mask and you're talking to someone 6 feet away, the hearing aid hears it, translates it, and sends it into your ear so that you can understand it. So every adversity, there is an equal or greater opportunity. Someone asked me about brain fog. Well, one of the things about brain fog that we deal with is we deal with people with disabilities who have early dementia. We also deal with people with disabilities who have trouble setting goals and memory issues. From an employment standpoint, we know what to do. We set up literally journals and books of what you're going to do and what you're going to do next. We have instructions on what to do that are in pictures rather than words. We have accommodations. In fact, we were working with a person with a traumatic brain injury. I came back to Vietnam with a traumatic brain injury. You said, wow, how did you deal with that? Well, I don't know if you know it, anyone who knows about traumatic brain injury, sometimes you sort of lose a few things, but the brain tends to rewire itself. I don't know if you know that. Mine rewired. And I actually think that after my traumatic brain injury, I was more effective than before it. You know why? Because I don't think in words anymore, even though I'm a speaker. Isn't that odd? I think in colors and lines and geometric shapes, and I can turn them around and make things, and then I can look at it and describe them to you. Hey, that's pretty neat. So look at the adversities that are coming your way and ask yourself, what am I learning from this? Because there is an equal or greater opportunity in these kinds of things. And the other thing is, we are a group. And one of the people I'd like to embrace, at least bring it back to work, are the post-COVID. We can accommodate them on the job. We can get them effectively back into the job, and we know how to do that. Rehab is called vocational rehab, and it's the disability community that is reaching out to them. And it is that was just a question that somebody asked. So I just wanted to respond to that. There is a way to look at disability, and it's a positive way. And I'd like to share with you for a moment, and then I'll get to the global warming and these concerns. But how we look at disability and problems, and it's worthwhile to use this to look at some of the issues that are coming toward you. And I'm going to read it because I just wrote it, did not memorize it. Please forgive me. But I'm going to read it off my little phone. And I wrote it for employers, but it doesn't have to be for employers. When companies consider hiring someone that may be worried that that person they're interviewing is carrying baggage, the answer to the question is probably yes. We all carry baggage of one kind or another. As many of my friends did in my generation, I came home from Vietnam with my share of baggage, a hearing loss, a traumatic brain injury, Agent Orange poisoning, okay? However, I learned from my experiences, and I no longer think of what happened to me as baggage. I embraced it. What was once my baggage has now become my backpack. Not something burdensome and heavy that I begrudgingly carry. It is now something valuable and precious that teaches lessons, develops new skills, inspires me to be creative every day. Helen Keller once said, "The road of life has many curves, but a curve is not a dead end unless you choose to fail to make the turn." Turn your baggage into your backpack and help others do so as well. Their and your greatest journey is still ahead of you. Believe in others. Lesson taught. Lesson learned. If anyone would like that, Milt will be glad, our office will be glad to send this to your organization and have them make it available to you for yourself or for anyone that you think might need that. Now, if you're asking me how I feel about climate change, I have been worried and concerned. I read the paper, I read the science, I bet, and I don't even know you, I bet every one of you has at least one relative like mine. I have one, a climate change denier, okay? The science denier, right? And so we have like these wonderful meetings, for Thanksgiving and stuff, and get that. But you know something? Anything that affects people with disabilities is something that I really am sensitive about, and anything that affects children. My wife and I, we are a foster family. In fact, we just Milt Wright Associates, my company, we just ended up writing a brand new program. We're putting it into place now, teaching foster families how to feel more comfortable fostering children with disabilities. And most children with disabilities, unfortunately, are disabled because of their environment. Unfortunately, sometimes it's a parental one or a big one, but these are kind of things. But I believe we need to act, but in order to act, I do not mean complain. I mean, we never got ADA passed by telling everyone what was wrong. We got ADA passed by telling them something was wrong and offering them a viable solution for these kinds of things, and started working with them. And that's why I say, if I'm going to be on a long march with a team, people with disabilities, I think you want them on your side. Not only are they affected, but they are also effective. And you set a wonderful precedent by making your organization accessible to people with all kinds of disabilities. because there are a lot of really good causes out there that ignore people with disabilities, and people with disabilities do not feel welcome to pursue what they think is important. I welcome by you, and
Richard?
I feel that the work you're doing is something that I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Richard, there was a question in here about language and disabled
Yes.
or disability, or could you talk a little bit about language as the organization reaches out to the disability community?
Oh, that's really a good question. Yeah. In the early days, I don't need to tell you all the awful words that people used about people with disabilities. At one time, the entire word disability was one that the population, people with disabilities, didn't like very much because it seemed to be negative. The word handicap came from the Old English beggar or cap in hand, and then they started moving. Well, maybe we need better, like maybe challenged, intellectually challenged or physically challenged or differently abled or special education and all that. And the new generation, we need to listen to the new generation. You know what the new generation of people with disabilities are saying? They're saying this. First, here's what I say. Put the person first. It's okay to call me deaf if you don't put deaf first. If you say, here is a person with a hearing impairment, I get to be the person first. I'm not a hearing impairment modified by the fact that I'm a human being. I'm a person. In fact, if you speak other languages, some of the Romance languages are beautiful. You see, English is one of the few languages where we will put the adjective before the noun, like the deaf man, the blind woman, the whatever. Most of the languages make you put the noun before the adjective. And for those of you who speak other languages, Spanish, French, the one that I was particularly enamored with was when someone did a literal translation. Rather than saying the deaf woman, it was literally translated as the woman who has the qualities of blindness or the qualities of deafness, and they called it that. So what I say, we always say, put the person first. Now, if you look at people with disabilities and ask them what they'd like to be called, but if you look at people with disabilities today, you know what they're saying? Remember the race? Remember women's movement? Remember these movements? There comes a time when each of these movements takes in all of the criticism that comes at them and embraces it, right? Remember, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. How about, woman, I am woman. In the end, people with disabilities are taking the very thing that people threw at them and wearing it as a badge of honor, but they're the only ones who have a right to do it to themselves. And so the end, you'll see a lot of people saying, disability is, one time we said disability is a four-letter word. They say disability is not a bad word. You know why? Because they're not ashamed of it anymore. It was only a bad word when they were made to be ashamed of it. But now it's something that they can look up to. I mean, I have a shirt that has a wheelchair, and I use a cane, I use a walker. It has the little, the parking logo, the little wheelchair parking logo on the sign. It's got the logo on here, and on the shirt it says, I'm just in it for the parking. So in the end, there's a sense of humor that the group makes. But one of the things that I always do is, it's not what you call them, but what you say afterwards. But ask them what they prefer. Ask everyone what what they prefer. And when in doubt, put the person first. But when in doubt, how about this? Why aren't they just a man? Why aren't they just a woman? Why aren't they just a child? The only reason to even include the disability is if in the context of what you're saying, the disability is an important issue to communicate in this way. Okay, so again, defer to the people with that, and always, in my mind, put the person. Milt, you got a thought on that?
Yeah, Richard, I want to say something, and then Karina will take over and ask some more questions. But I saw the Crip Camp mentioned in the chat room. It's an excellent movie. Please watch it.
What a great movie! It was better than my movie.
Richard and I, Richard especially, but I too, were instrumental in the ADA as it related to employers and working with employers and getting them to buy into supporting the ADA when it was passed. But there's a story in Crip Camp. The lead person in Crip Camp is a woman by the name of Judy Heumann. And she used to be with the Secretary of State's office. She's been around a long time. And I was at a conference in Northern California many years ago. And I picked up, now this is language then, this was in the 80s. I picked up the San Francisco Chronicle and it said, handicap demonstrators arrested. Now, obviously, Richard talked about, we don't use the word handicap anymore. But I read it, and it turns out that about 30 or 35 people, mostly in wheelchairs, were blocking the buses in San Francisco, saying, we know that we're inconveniencing you passengers, but our life is inconvenienced. We can't even ride the bus. Now, I read further, and it was Judy Heumann that was leading this demonstration. The following day, in San Francisco Chronicle, handicap demonstrators released in the interest of justice. And I went, what? What happened? And I read it. The jails weren't accessible. They couldn't even put them in jail. So they were let out. I had to tell that. Karina, you want to go ahead?
No problem. It's been a pleasure to have you both here with us today. Thank you, Richard, for offering your story and inspiring us to continue to open doors to communities that we know need to be part of our movement. I just wanted to see if you had any final comments to share.
Other than I think the work that you were doing is so very, very important, not just for me, but one of the things that my wife and I, Debbie, decided to do was take in a fair amount of homeless children. And I want them to have a future. And I want them to have a healthy and a safe future. And I believe that what you're doing is so very important for that. We didn't, Art and I and Judy Heumann will tell you this too. We really didn't do it for our generation. We did it for the next. Now, climate change, you face it every day. You face the issues. I mean, look at California and the water and the heat and the fires and that. But we're doing it for the next generation. We're doing it so there is a next generation. And I don't know what could possibly be more important than that. And I don't know what you could, and I don't know now because it's probably the first time you've ever seen me. I don't know what you could ask me to do that I wouldn't do gleefully for you, because it's the same thing, trying to make the world a better place for everybody. So that's the way I feel about what you're doing.
Thank you so
But the
much.
one thing I do want to do, I'm going to make some of these kids into electronic engineers so we can get these Zooms going better. That'll fix them.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration.
Like what you hear? Recommend us to your friends and make sure to give us a 5-star rating. It helps us show up on other listeners' feeds. Feel free to pass on any suggestions for future episodes in the comments as well.
And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.